Bear Cub was locked in a freezing meat locker by poachers. What this baby did was shocking. Let us know where you're watching from. If you love my content, consider supporting it with a super thanks. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. It'll help us to remain in touch with amazing people like you. The silence of winter hung heavy over Pine Ridge Valley, broken only by the soft crunch of snow beneath Lily Morgan's boots. Her breath formed delicate clouds in the frigid air as she trudged toward her cabin, arms laden with supplies from the village store. The approaching storm had cast the afternoon sky in shades of steel gray, promising to isolate the scattered homes of Pine Ridge even more than usual. Inside Lily's cozy log cabin, 10-month-old Noah babbled happily in his playpen, reaching for the mobile of woodland creatures dancing above his head. His bright blue eyes, inherited from his father who had been lost to an avalanche the previous winter, sparkled with innocent joy. Lily had moved to this remote corner of Montana to heal, to give Noah a peaceful childhood away from pitying glances and whispered condolences. "Almost home, little man," Lily murmured to herself, picturing Noah's delighted face when she showed him the stuffed fox she'd found at the general store. She didn't notice the faded truck parked half-hidden among the pines, nor the fresh boot prints leading into the woods behind her property. The valley had its secrets, and on this particular evening, those secrets would entwine with her life in ways she could never have imagined. As Lily rounded the final bend in the snow-covered path, a distant wail, neither human nor familiar animal, pierced the stillness. She froze, clutching her packages tighter. The sound came again, desperate and mournful, raising goosebumps along her arms despite her thick winter coat. "What on earth?" she whispered, scanning the tree line. The cry seemed to emanate from the abandoned hunting cabin a quarter-mile deeper into the forest. Old Man Winters had left it to rot after his passing 3 summers ago, and locals generally avoided it, claiming the dilapidated structure was unsafe. Some even whispered it was haunted. The wail came once more, weaker now, fading like a candle in the wind. Something in Lily's chest tightened. She knew that sound, the unmistakable distress of a creature in pain. As a former wildlife rehabilitation specialist, she had spent years attuned to the voices of animals in need. This was a call she couldn't ignore, not even with the storm approaching and Noah waiting. She hurried the remaining distance to her cabin, pushed open the door, and set her supplies on the kitchen counter. Noah squealed with delight at her return, pulling himself up to stand in his playpen. "Hey, sweet boy," Lily cooed, scooping him up and nuzzling his soft cheek. "Mama heard something strange outside. We need to go check it out." She hesitated, glancing at the darkening sky visible through the window. Taking Noah into the woods with a storm brewing was risky, but leaving him alone was unthinkable. Her nearest neighbor, elderly Ruth Jenkins, lived a mile away. "We'll be quick," she promised, wrapping Noah in his thickest snowsuit and tucking him into the baby carrier she strapped to her chest. "Someone might need our help." She grabbed her emergency backpack, always kept ready by the door, a habit from her days working with injured wildlife. Flashlight, first aid kit, water, spare blankets, and a satellite phone went into the pack. For good measure, she added a thermos of hot chocolate and some of Noah's snacks. As they stepped back into the cold, the wind had picked up, whispering through the pines with increasing urgency. Noah buried his face against her chest, and Lily pulled his hood more securely around his chubby cheeks. "Just a little adventure before the storm," she told him, forcing confidence into her voice. "We'll be back home before the snow starts." The wail came again as they approached the tree line, fainter now, barely audible above the wind. Lily switched on her flashlight and drew a deep breath, stepping into the forest toward the abandoned hunting cabin. What she couldn't know was that 3 men had visited that cabin earlier, carrying a burlap sack that writhed and struggled. They couldn't know that these men had fled at the first radio reports of the approaching blizzard, leaving behind something precious and alive in their haste. And no one could have predicted what Noah would do when they discovered what waited for them within those rotting wooden walls. The forest path was barely visible beneath the fresh snow, winding between ancient pines that creaked and groaned in the rising wind. Lily's flashlight beam danced across the white landscape, creating strange shadows that seemed to move of their own accord. Noah, usually chatty in his baby language, had gone silent against her chest, as if sensing the gravity of their mission. "Almost there, sweetie," Lily whispered, though she wasn't sure if she was comforting Noah or herself. The temperature had dropped at least 10 degrees since they'd left the cabin, and ice crystals were forming on her eyelashes. Through the trees, she caught her first glimpse of the abandoned hunting cabin. Its weathered boards were gray as old bones, and the sagging roof wore a thick cap of snow. One window was boarded up. The other gaped black and empty like a hollow eye. The wailing had stopped completely now, replaced by an eerie silence that seemed to press against Lily's eardrums. She paused at the edge of the small clearing, every instinct screaming that something was wrong. That's when she noticed them. Fresh tire tracks leading to the cabin, already partially filled with new snow. Someone had been here recently. Very recently. "Hello?" Lily called out, her voice thin in the cold air. "Is anyone there? I heard something." No response came except the wind whistling through the gaps in the cabin's walls. She approached cautiously, her boots crunching on the packed snow near the entrance. The cabin door hung askew on rusty hinges, revealing nothing but darkness beyond. As she moved closer, her flashlight beam caught something that made her heart skip. Drops of blood, dark red against the white snow, leading from a vehicle's tire tracks to the cabin entrance. Noah stirred against her chest, making a soft cooing sound that seemed unnaturally loud in the silence. Lily held her breath, straining to hear any sound from within the cabin. There, a scratching noise, faint but unmistakable. Something was alive in there. "We should go back," Lily whispered to Noah, but even as she said it, she knew she couldn't. Not if there was an injured animal inside. Not when every second might mean the difference between life and death. She pushed the cabin door open with her foot, wincing as it creaked loudly on its hinges. The flashlight beam swept across the interior, revealing overturned furniture, years of accumulated debris, and in the far corner, a large metal freezer, the kind hunters used to store game. Its lid was closed, but she could hear the scratching coming from inside. Fresh scratches marred the metal surface around the lock. A heavy padlock that looked new compared to everything else in the decrepit cabin. "Oh, God," Lily breathed. Someone had locked something alive inside that freezer. She rushed forward, setting her backpack down and examining the lock. It was sturdy, professional grade, not something she could break with her bare hands. The scratching from inside grew more frantic, accompanied by a weak, mewling cry that tugged at her heart. Noah began to fuss, picking up on her distress. "Shh, baby, shh," she soothed, bouncing gently as she searched the cabin for something to break the lock. Her flashlight beam fell on an old crowbar propped in the corner. As she grabbed it, her light illuminated something else, a piece of paper nailed to the wall. The writing was fresh, bold letters in black marker. "Leave it, not your business." Lily's blood ran cold. This wasn't just an abandoned animal, this was deliberate. Someone had trapped whatever was in that freezer and left it to die. The scratching inside the freezer was growing weaker. She didn't have time to be afraid. "Hold on," she called to whatever was inside. "I'm going to get you out." She wedged the crowbar under the lock's hasp and pulled with all her strength. The metal groaned, but didn't give. Noah whimpered, and she realized her movements were jostling him. "I'm sorry, sweetheart," she panted, adjusting her stance. "Just a little more." The lock snapped with a sharp crack that echoed through the cabin. Lily's hands trembled as she lifted the freezer lid. The sight that greeted her made her gasp out loud. A bear cub, no more than 6 months old, lay curled in the bottom of the freezer. Its fur was matted with blood from wounds on its paws. It had clearly tried to claw its way out. The cub's eyes, glazed with pain and cold, fixed on hers with an almost human pleading. "Oh no," Lily whispered, her wildlife training kicking in. The cub was hypothermic, barely conscious. She needed to act fast, but as she reached into the freezer, a sound from outside made her freeze, the crunch of footsteps on snow. Multiple sets of footsteps. Someone was coming back. Lily's heart hammered against her ribs as the footsteps grew closer. She could make out voices now, rough, male voices arguing in the darkness. "I told you we should have dealt with it properly," one voice growled. "Can't leave loose ends, especially with Garrett breathing down our necks." "The storm's getting worse," another replied. "We grab what we came for and get out. The cold will finish the job." Acting on pure instinct, Lily scooped the barely conscious cub into her arms. It was heavier than she expected, maybe 40 pounds of limp fur and muscle. The cub let out a weak moan, and Noah responded with a curious gurgle from his carrier. "Shh," Lily breathed, backing away from the freezer. The footsteps were at the cabin door now. She had seconds. Her eyes darted around the dim interior. There, a narrow door she hadn't noticed before, probably leading to a back room or storage area. She slipped through it just as the main door burst open. The room was tiny, more of a closet really, filled with moldy hunting gear and old ammunition boxes. Lily pressed herself against the wall, the cub cradled awkwardly in her arms, while Noah squirmed against her chest. Through a crack in the door, she could see flashlight beams sweeping the main room. "What the hell?" The angry voice belonged to a large man with a scarred face. "The lock's broken." "The cub's gone," said his companion, a wiry man with nervous eyes. "Someone's been here." The third man, older with graying hair, held up a hand. Quiet, they might still be here. Lily held her breath, praying Noah would stay silent. The cub in her arms was trembling, whether from cold or fear she couldn't tell. Its breathing was shallow, labored. Without immediate care, it wouldn't survive much longer. "Check the back," the scarred man ordered. Panic flooded Lily's system. There was nowhere to hide in this cramped space. As footsteps approached, she noticed a loose board in the wall behind her. Desperation gave her strength. She yanked it aside, revealing a narrow opening to the outside. "Mama?" Noah chose that moment to speak, his baby voice clear in the silence. "There," one of the men shouted. Lily didn't think. She squeezed through the opening, splinters tearing at her coat, the cub clutched tight against her side. She burst out into the storm, because it was a storm now, snow falling so thick she could barely see 10 feet ahead. "Stop!" a voice bellowed behind her. She ran, through the trees, stumbling over hidden roots, the cub's weight making every step a struggle. Noah bounced against her chest, crying now, his wails mixing with the wind. Behind them, flashlight beams sliced through the darkness, and angry shouts grew closer. "Circle around!" she heard someone yell. "Cut them off at the ridge!" Lily's lungs burned with cold air. The cub was slipping from her grip, its body limp. She couldn't keep this pace. not carrying both Noah and the injured animal. But she couldn't leave the cub. It would die. Through the driving snow, she spotted a fallen tree, creating a small shelter between its trunk and a large boulder. She dove into the space, gasping for breath. Noah's cries had turned to hiccups, his little body shaking with cold despite his snowsuit. "Shh, baby, please," she whispered, her tears hot against her frozen cheeks. "We have to be quiet." The cub lay still in her arms, too still. She fumbled in her pack with one hand, finding the thermal blanket she always carried. Wrapping it around the cub, she pressed her ear to its chest. A heartbeat, faint but present. The men's voices seemed to come from all directions now, distorted by the wind. They were searching systematically, and it was only a matter of time before a beam of light swept over their hiding spot, paused, then moved on. Lily's relief was short-lived as she heard one of them say, "Tracks lead this way, but the snow's covering them fast." She needed a plan. The storm was worsening, visibility dropping to near zero. It might work in her favor if she could just... A sudden roar split the air, deep and primal, freezing everyone in place. Lily knew that sound. She'd heard it once before during her wildlife work. Mother Bear. "Oh, God," she breathed, understanding dawning. The cub in her arms, its mother was looking for it, and an enraged mother bear was far more dangerous than any poacher. "What was that?" one of the men asked, fear creeping into his voice. "Just the wind," the leader said, but he didn't sound convinced. The roar came again, closer this time. Through the snow, Lily caught a glimpse of something massive moving between the trees. The men's flashlight swung wildly, trying to locate the source. "That's no wind," the nervous one said. "That's a..." A scream cut through the night as something large crashed through the underbrush. Lily heard the men shouting, running, their organized search forgotten in panic. The mother bear had found them first. But Lily's relief was tempered by a new fear. The bear was maddened with worry for her cub, and in this state she was dangerous to everyone, including Lily and Noah. The cub in Lily's arms stirred, perhaps sensing its mother's presence. It let out a weak cry that seemed to echo in the storm. Everything went silent. Then, with a burst of snow and fury, the massive grizzly appeared before their hiding spot. 800 pounds of maternal rage, standing on hind legs, eyes blazing in the darkness. Noah, who had been quiet, suddenly reached out his tiny hand toward the bear, and in that moment, something extraordinary happened. The cub in Lily's arms lifted its head and cried out. A clear, strong sound that cut through the storm. Noah's hand touched the cub's fur, and he made a sound Lily had never heard before, almost like he was speaking to it. The mother bear dropped to all fours, her massive head turning from side to side as if confused, her eyes fixed on her cub, then on Noah, then on Lily. For a heartbeat that lasted eternity, predator and protector faced each other in the swirling snow. Lily, slowly, carefully, set the cub on the ground. It wobbled but managed to take a step toward its mother. Noah watched with wide eyes, still making those strange, soothing sounds. The mother bear moved forward, sniffing her cub, checking its injuries with surprising gentleness. Then her gaze returned to Lily and Noah. In those ancient eyes, Lily saw something she never expected: recognition, understanding, perhaps even gratitude. A gunshot shattered the moment. "There!" One of the poachers had returned, rifle raised. "I've got a clear shot at the adult," the mother bear roared, positioning herself between the gunman and her cub. But she was exposed, vulnerable. The man's finger tightened on the trigger. "No!" Lily screamed, but her voice was lost in the wind. That's when Noah did something that would haunt Lily's dreams for years to come. The baby threw his tiny body forward, out of the carrier, his reaching hands glowing with an ethereal light in the darkness. The gunshot rang out, but the bullet never found its mark. Time seemed to slow to a crawl. The projectile, visible as a dark streak through the swirling snow, curved impossibly in midair, veering away from the mother bear and embedding itself harmlessly in a tree trunk 20 feet to the left. The crack of splintering wood echoed through the forest. The poacher stared at his rifle in disbelief. What the... He tried to fire again, but the weapon jammed, ice crystals forming rapidly along the barrel despite the mechanism being warm from the first shot. Noah hung suspended in the air for a moment longer, his small form glowing with that strange, soft light. Then he gently floated back into Lily's arms, the light fading as he giggled. A perfectly normal baby sound that seemed wildly out of place in the supernatural scene. "Did you see that?" The nervous poacher's voice cracked with fear. "The kid, he did something." "Shut up, Marcus," the scarred leader snapped, but his eyes betrayed his own uncertainty. "It's the storm playing tricks, that's all." The mother bear hadn't moved during the impossible moment. She stood perfectly still, her dark eyes now focused entirely on Noah. The cub limped to her side, pressing against her massive flank with obvious relief. "We need to go," the gray-haired poacher said urgently. "Forget the cub. Garrett won't pay us enough for this kind of trouble." But the scarred man raised his rifle. "I don't care about the money anymore. No one makes a fool of Jake Morrison." He aimed at Lily this time. The mother bear moved with surprising speed, but it was Noah who acted first. The baby's eyes, those innocent blue eyes, suddenly reflected the storm itself, swirling with whites and grays like miniature blizzards. He raised one tiny hand, and the snow around them responded. The wind, already fierce, became a living thing. It spiraled around their small group in a perfect cylinder, walls of snow so dense they blocked out everything beyond. The poacher's shouts became muffled, distant. Inside the eye of this impossible storm, Lily found herself in relative calm with Noah, the bears, and a pocket of still air. "What's happening?" she whispered, though she wasn't sure who she was asking. Noah burbled happily, reaching toward the mother bear with grabby hands. The massive grizzly moved closer, lowering her great head until she was eye level with the baby. They regarded each other for a long moment, ancient wildness meeting innocent humanity. Then the bear did something that made Lily's knees weak. She gently nuzzled Noah's outstretched hand, rumbling deep in her chest. Not a growl, but almost a purr. The cub, emboldened, limped forward and sniffed at Noah's feet. The wall of wind and snow continued to rage around them, but Lily felt strangely calm. Whatever was happening, whatever power flowed through her infant son, it meant them no harm. She could feel it, a warmth despite the cold, a sense of rightness in this impossible moment. Through the swirling barrier she could hear the poachers fighting against the wind, their curses growing fainter as they were driven back. One of them screamed something about wolves, though Lily had seen no wolves. Another claimed the trees themselves were moving, blocking their path. "We need to get out of here." Marcus's voice was high with panic. "This whole forest is cursed." "Stop being a coward," Jake Morrison roared back. But even his voice held an edge of fear now. The mother bear turned her attention back to her cub, licking its wounds with careful attention. The little one whimpered but submitted to its mother's ministrations. As Lily watched, she noticed something odd. Where the mother's tongue passed over the cub's injuries, the bleeding seemed to slow, the wounds already looking less severe. Noah made a pleased sound and clapped his hands. The moment his palms came together, a pulse of that strange light rippled outward. Where it touched the cub, Lily gasped as she saw the deepest cuts begin to close, leaving only faint marks in the fur. "Blessed Mary," Lily breathed. She'd been raised Catholic but had fallen away from church after her husband's death. Now, holding her glowing child in a supernatural snowstorm while bears healed before her eyes, she wondered if she'd been wrong to lose faith. The mother bear's eyes met hers again, and in them Lily saw intelligence far beyond what any wildlife textbook had taught her. This was no ordinary animal, perhaps it never had been. The wind wall suddenly pulsed, and through it, Lily glimpsed shadows moving in ways that defied nature. The trees did seem to be leaning in, their branches reaching like gnarled fingers toward the fleeing poachers. The men's screams were growing distant now, fading into the storm. "Mama scared," Noah said clearly, his first full sentence. Lily's heart stopped. He was far too young to be speaking so clearly, but then again he was too young to be doing any of this. "It's okay, baby," she whispered, though she wasn't sure anything would ever be okay again. "Mama's here." The mother bear chuffed softly and turned toward the deeper forest. Her cub followed, moving more easily now, its gait steadier. After a few steps, the mother paused and looked back at Lily, her head tilted in an unmistakable invitation. "You want us to follow?" Lily asked, feeling slightly ridiculous talking to a bear. But the grizzly huffed again and took another step, waiting. Noah squirmed in her arms, reaching toward the bears. "Go," he said firmly. "Friends, go." Lily's rational mind screamed that following a wild grizzly into a blizzard while carrying her infant son was insanity. But nothing about this night was rational. And somehow, she trusted this bear more than she feared the storm or the poachers who might still be out there. "All right," she said, adjusting Noah in his carrier and pulling her hood up. "Lead the way." The moment she stepped forward, the wind wall began to move with them, maintaining its protective barrier. Through the snow, Lily thought she saw other shapes moving, larger than wolves but more fluid, with eyes that gleamed gold in the darkness. Guardians or threats, she couldn't tell, but they kept their distance. The mother bear led them deeper into the forest, following paths Lily couldn't see. The terrain should have been treacherous in the storm, but somehow she found firm footing with each step, as if the very ground was guiding her feet. After what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes, the trees opened into a small hollow. At its center sat a cabin, but not like any cabin Lily had ever seen. This one seemed to grow from the earth itself, its logs still bearing bark and living branches that formed the roof. Warm light glowed from windows that looked more grown than cut. The door opened before they reached it. An old woman stood in the doorway, her hair white as the storm, her eyes the same gold as the shadowy guardians Lily had glimpsed. She wore a simple dress that seemed to shift between fur and fabric, depending on how the light hit it. "Ah," the woman said, her voice carrying despite the wind. "I was wondering when you'd arrive. Come in, child, all of you. The storm has plans tonight, and we'd best not keep it waiting." The mother bear walked right past the woman into the cabin, her cub following, as if this was the most natural thing in the world. Lily hesitated at the threshold. "Who are you?" The woman smiled, and in that smile was winter itself, beautiful, dangerous, and ancient beyond measure. "Names have power, dear one, but you may call me Sarah. I've been waiting for you. Well, for him, really." She nodded at Noah, who was watching her with those strange, storm-filled eyes. "He's been calling to us for months now, though I doubt you noticed. The awakening is always hardest on the mothers." "Awakening?" Lily's voice was barely a whisper. "Come inside," Sarah said gently. "There's much to explain. and the Earl of Morrison's men won't be bothering us again tonight. My friends in the forest are ensuring that, though they'll likely have nightmares about trees with eyes for years to come. As Lily stepped through the doorway, Noah laughed, a sound like silver bells in winter air. The cabin's warmth enveloped them, carrying scents of herbs and wood smoke and something else. Something wild and ancient and achingly familiar, though Lily couldn't say why. Behind them, the storm continued to rage, but it no longer felt threatening. It felt like protection, like home. The door closed softly, and Lily's old life ended with the click of the latch. Whatever lay ahead, whatever Noah was becoming, whatever this world of awakened nature meant, she was part of it now. In the corner of the unusual cabin, the mother bear and her cub had curled up near the fireplace, looking as comfortable as house cats. The cub's wounds were now completely healed, leaving not even scars behind. Sarah gestured to a chair that looked carved from a single piece of wood, still bearing leaves that rustled gently despite being indoors. "Sit, child. Let me tell you about your son, and about why the old blood has awakened in him. The world is changing, and young Noah here, he's going to help it remember what it used to be." Lily sank into the chair, Noah babbling happily in her arms as he reached for the dancing flames in the fireplace. Flames that seemed to reach back toward him, forming shapes of running wolves and flying ravens before returning to normal fire. "Tell me everything," Lily said, surprised by her own calm. Perhaps she was in shock. Or perhaps, deep down, she'd always known her son was special. The dreams during her pregnancy, dreams of ancient forests and speaking animals, suddenly felt less like fantasies and more like prophecies. Sarah's golden eyes glowed warmer. "Everything? That would take lifetimes, dear one. But I'll tell you enough. Enough to understand why those men came for the cub, why the forest responded to your son's call, and why you're not the first mother to sit in that chair with a gifted child." She paused, her expression growing distant. "Though you may be the last, if we don't act carefully." Outside, the storm howled with 1,000 voices, and Lily could have sworn she heard her name in the wind. Noah certainly did. He turned toward the sound, giggling as if greeting an old friend. The night was far from over, and Lily suspected her life would never be simple again. But looking at her son's joy, at the peaceful bears by the fire, at this impossible woman in her impossible cabin, she found she didn't mind as much as she probably should have. "Start from the beginning," she said, settling deeper into the chair that cradled her like a living thing. Sarah smiled and began to speak, her voice weaving with the storm song, telling tales of a time when the world was younger and the barriers between human and nature were gossamer thin. And as she spoke, Noah's eyes grew heavy, the glow fading as he drifted toward sleep, safe in his mother's arms, while outside, the awakened forest kept its watch. "Long before your kind built cities of stone and steel," Sarah began, her weathered hands moving gracefully as she spoke, "there were those who could speak with the wind, dance with the seasons, and heal with a touch. They were called many names across many lands, druids, shamans, wise ones, but they all shared one gift, the ability to hear the earth's heartbeat." Lily shifted Noah gently, his weight familiar and comforting even as her mind reeled. "And Noah has this gift." "More than that," Sarah said, rising to stir something in a pot hanging over the fire. The scent that wafted from it was impossible to describe, like spring rain and autumn leaves and winter's first snow all at once. "Your son carries the old blood in its purest form. He's what we call a bridge, someone who can reconnect the broken bonds between humanity and the wild. But he's just a baby," Lily protested weakly, though she knew how hollow the words sounded after what she'd witnessed. Sarah chuckled, a sound like wind chimes made of ice. Age means little to power this ancient. The youngest are often the strongest. They haven't learned yet that magic is impossible. She poured the aromatic liquid into 2 cups, offering one to Lily. Drink, it will help you understand. Lily hesitated, then sipped. The taste was indescribable, but warmth flooded through her instantly. Not just physical warmth, but something deeper. The cabin suddenly seemed more alive, the walls breathing gently, the floor humming with underground rhythms. "What is this?" she gasped. "Memory tea," Sarah said simply. "It helps humans remember what they've forgotten. Look at your hands." Lily glanced down and nearly dropped the cup. Her hands were glowing faintly, covered in delicate patterns like frost on a window. As she watched, the patterns shifted, forming images: forests, mountains, vast plains under ancient skies. "We all carry the potential," Sarah explained, "but most have buried it so deep under civilization's weight that it might as well be dead. Your son, however—" She gestured to Noah, who was now sleeping peacefully, tiny wisps of light still dancing around his fingers. "He was born awakened, and his awakening is calling others." A soft whimper drew their attention. The bear cub had stirred, padding over to sniff at Noah's dangling foot. Its mother watched protectively but didn't intervene. "They recognize him," Sarah noted. "Animals always know. It's humans who've forgotten how to see." She settled back in her chair, which Lily noticed was actually a living tree stump, its roots disappearing into the cabin floor. The men who trapped that cub, they work for someone who hasn't forgotten, someone who seeks to use the old power for very dark purposes. "Earl Morrison," Lily said, remembering what the woman had mentioned earlier. Sarah's expression darkened. A title he gave himself. His real name is Morrison Blackwood, and his family has hunted those with the gift for generations. They learned long ago that certain animals, bears especially, are drawn to places of power. Trap the right bear, and eventually someone like your son will come. "A trap," Lily breathed. "The cub was bait." Indeed, but Morrison underestimated 2 things: your son's power and a mother's love. Sarah smiled sadly, both human and ursine. As if understanding, the mother bear rumbled softly, her eyes never leaving Noah. "What does Morrison want with children like Noah?" Lily asked, though she dreaded the answer. Sarah was quiet for a long moment, staring into the fire. When she spoke, her voice carried centuries of sorrow. "Power can be transferred, stolen, corrupted. There are rituals, dark ones, that can extract the gift from one person and give it to another. Morrison's family has been trying for generations to claim what was never theirs." Lily clutched Noah tighter. "Over my dead body." "That, I'm afraid, is often how it ends," Sarah said gently. "But you're not alone. The awakening of a bridge calls to all who still remember. They're coming." "Who's coming?" Before Sarah could answer, the cabin door burst open. But instead of wind and snow, a figure stumbled through. A young man, perhaps 20, with wild dark hair and clothes that seemed to shift between modern fabric and animal hide. His eyes were the bright gold of a wolf's. "Sarah," he gasped. "They're moving. Morrison's called in hunters from 3 states. They'll be here by dawn." Sarah stood calmly. "Peace, Marcus. How many?" 40, maybe 50, armed with more than guns. They have iron chains blessed by their tame priests and—" He paused, noticing Lily and Noah for the first time. His nostrils flared slightly and his eyes widened. "Is he—" "Yes," Sarah confirmed. "The bridge has awakened." Marcus dropped to one knee, bowing his head. "Finally," he whispered. Then louder, "The packs are gathering. The murder of crows has already arrived. The bear clans are descending from the mountains. But Sarah, Morrison has something new, something we haven't seen before." "What?" Sarah's voice sharpened. "Cages," Marcus said grimly. "Cages that can hold us even when we change. And collars that burn. He's been planning this for years." Lily's mind was spinning. Packs? Murder of crows? People who could change? She looked at Marcus more carefully and noticed things she'd missed. The way he moved with predatory grace, how his eyes reflected the firelight differently than human eyes should. "You're a wolf," she said, not quite making it a question. Marcus grinned, showing teeth that were definitely sharper than normal. "Guilty. Marcus Silverpaw, at your service. And you're the bridge's mother. That makes you pack now, whether you know it or not." Noah stirred in his sleep, murmuring something that sounded like "woof." Marcus's grin widened. "He knows," the young man said wonderingly. "Even asleep, he knows." Sarah was already moving, gathering items from around the cabin. Crystals that pulsed with inner light, bundles of herbs, a staff that looked carved from starlight itself. "We need to move. This cabin is warded, but not against an army." "Where can we go?" Lily asked, standing carefully to avoid waking Noah. "The heart," Sarah said immediately. "The old gathering place. Morrison's people have never found it because it doesn't want to be found. But it will open for the bridge." "The bears," Lily said suddenly, looking at the mother and cub. "We can't leave them." Sarah smiled. "Oh, child, they're coming with us. Ursula here is more than she seems." She addressed the mother bear directly. "It's time, old friend. Show her." What happened next made everything else seem normal by comparison. The mother bear stood on her hind legs and kept standing, her form stretching and shifting. Fur became fabric, paws became hands, and within moments a woman stood before them. Tall, powerful, with long brown hair streaked with gray and the same intelligent dark eyes. "Forgive the deception," the woman said, her voice deep and rich. "I am Ursula Bearwood, clan mother of the Northern Browns. I felt your son's call weeks ago, but had to be sure." She knelt beside her cub, who was watching with bright eyes. "My daughter is young for her first change, but your son's presence has accelerated her gift." The cub shimmered, and suddenly a little girl of perhaps 5 sat there, brown-haired and giggling. "Mama, the baby is sparkly." Lily sank back into the chair, overwhelmed. Shapeshifters. Real, actual shapeshifters. Her son was some kind of magical bridge, and apparently they were all being hunted by an army of dark occultists. "I need a moment," she said weakly. "I'm afraid we don't have one," Sarah said urgently. "Can you feel it?" Lily was about to say no when she realized she could feel something. A wrongness approaching, like oil spreading over clean water. It made her skin crawl and her teeth ache. Noah's eyes snapped open, no longer blue, but swirling with all the colors of storm and forest. "Bad coming," he said clearly. "Iron and hurt." Marcus was at the door, sniffing the air. "They're using vehicles. I can smell the exhaust, and something else." His face paled. "Sarah, they have one of the Forgotten." Sarah's face went white. "Impossible. They were all destroyed." "What's a Forgotten?" Lily demanded. "Beings that chose to sever themselves from nature completely," Sarah explained quickly. "They become voids, anti-life. They drain magic just by existing. If Morrison has one dot, he can track us," Ursula finished grimly. "And worse, he can nullify our abilities." A howl split the night, not wolf, not wind, but something that made every instinct scream danger. It was answered by others, a chorus of wrongness that seemed to come from all directions. "They've surrounded us," Marcus reported, his form already starting to blur around the edges. "I need to warn the others." "Go," Sarah commanded. "Tell them to fall back to the heart. We'll meet them there." Marcus nodded and burst through the door. Mid-leap, his form exploded into fur and fang. A massive gray wolf hit the snow running, vanishing into the storm. Sarah turned to Lily, her ancient eyes deadly serious. "Listen carefully. You must take Noah to the heart. Ursula will guide you. I'll hold them here." "No," Lily protested. "We stay together." "Child," Sarah said gently, "I've lived for centuries. I've been waiting for your son even longer. This is what I'm meant to do." She pressed something into Lily's hand, a pendant that felt warm and alive. "This will help you find the way. Trust the forest. Trust your son. And whatever happens, don't let them take him." Another howl, closer now. Through the window, Lily could see lights approaching, harsh electric beams that seemed to wound the darkness itself. "Mom, go!" the little bear girl urged, already starting to shift back to her cub form. "The bad men are coming." Ursula was bare again, nosing urgently at Lily's leg. Noah reached for the bear, gurgling happily despite the danger, or perhaps because of it. The worse things got, the calmer he seemed to become. Sarah opened a back door Lily hadn't noticed before. Beyond it lay not the storm, but a path that glowed faintly green, winding between trees that looked older than time. "The old roads," Sarah explained. "They'll take you where you need to go. But hurry, the Forgotten's presence will start closing them soon." Lily wanted to protest, to refuse to leave this strange woman who'd shown them such kindness. But Noah was already reaching toward the glowing path, his own light responding to it. "Thank you," she whispered. Sarah smiled, and for a moment, Lily saw her truly. Not an old woman, but something ageless and wild, beautiful and terrible as winter itself. "Thank me by keeping him safe. Now go." Lily ran through the door, following Ursula's massive form. The moment her feet hit the glowing path, she felt it. A pull, a rightness, as if she'd found a road she'd been searching for all her life without knowing it. Behind them, the cabin exploded with silver light as Sarah made her stand. The screams that followed were neither human nor animal, but something worse. The sound of wrongness meeting ancient power. "Don't look back," Lily told herself, clutching Noah as they ran along the impossible path. "Don't look back." But she did anyway, just once, in time to see the cabin transform into a massive tree, its branches spreading wide enough to scrape the sky. Lightning, not from the storm but from Sarah herself, arced between the branches, striking down shadows that moved in ways shadows shouldn't. Then the path curved, the scene vanished, and they were running through a forest that existed outside normal space, where the trees sang and the very air tasted of magic. Noah laughed in delight, his hands leaving trails of light with every gesture. And despite everything, the danger, the impossibility, the sheer terror of it all, Lily found herself laughing too. They were running for their lives on a magical path through an impossible forest, guided by a shape-shifting bear while being hunted by dark occultists and something called a Forgotten. Her infant son was apparently the key to reconnecting humanity with nature itself. Her old life, the quiet cabin, the healing solitude, the simple goal of raising Noah away from the world's complications was gone forever. In its place was something vast and strange and terrifying. But as Noah reached up to pat her cheek with one glowing hand, babbling happily about pretty lights and nice bear, Lily realized something else. She wouldn't go back even if she could. This was Noah's world. Their world now. And whatever lay at the end of this path, whatever the heart turned out to be, whatever Morrison and his hunters threw at them, she would face it. She was a mother. Noah was her cub. And like Ursula protecting her own child, Lily would let nothing, not men, not monsters, not the forgotten themselves, harm her son. The path wound on through the singing forest, leading them deeper into mystery, and somewhere behind them, the night exploded with the sound of Sarah's last stand. Silver fire against creeping darkness, ancient power against modern evil. The battle for Noah, and perhaps for the world itself, had begun. The glowing path twisted through impossible spaces, sometimes narrow as a deer trail, other times wide as a Roman road. The trees here were unlike anything Lily had ever seen. Some had bark of silver, others leaves that chimed like bells in the wind. Occasionally, she glimpsed things moving in the shadows between the trunks, forms that might have been deer if deer had human eyes, or birds if birds flew backwards through time. Noah seemed to understand this place instinctively. He babbled directions to Lily in his baby talk. "Left, Mama. Pretty tree wants hello." Each time she followed his guidance, the path grew brighter, warmer. Ursula's massive bear form padded ahead, her daughter riding on her back in human form, clutching her mother's fur with small hands. The child, who'd shyly introduced herself as Emma during a brief rest, kept looking back at Noah with wonder. "He makes the flowers sing," Emma whispered. "Can you hear them, lady?" Lily was about to say no when she realized she could hear something, a faint melody that seemed to come from the luminescent flowers lining the path. The tune was hauntingly beautiful, like a lullaby sung in a language older than words. "I hear it," she said softly. They'd been traveling for what felt like hours, but could have been minutes. Time moved strangely on the old roads. The sounds of battle from Sarah's last stand had long since faded, replaced by the forest's otherworldly symphony. Then Ursula stopped abruptly, her hackles rising. A growl rumbled from her chest as she scented the air. "What is it?" Lily asked, clutching Noah tighter. Emma's eyes had gone wide with fear. "Mama smells wrongness. The empty ones found the path." Before Lily could ask what that meant, she felt it. A cold that had nothing to do with temperature. It was the chill of absence, of void, of hungry nothing trying to devour everything. The glowing path flickered like a candle in wind. From the shadows ahead stepped a figure that made Lily's eyes water to look at. It was shaped like a man but moved like a whole in reality, its edges blurring and shifting as if the world couldn't quite decide where it ended and began. Where its eyes should have been were pools of absolute darkness that pulled at her gaze. "Bridge Mother," it spoke, and its voice was the sound of things ending. "Morrison offers terms. Give us the child, and you may live. Refuse, and watch everything you love become nothing." Noah whimpered, the first sound of distress he'd made all night. The creature's presence was affecting him, dimming his natural glow. Ursula roared and charged, but the moment she got close to the creature, her form began to flicker. She stumbled, suddenly just a normal bear, her shape-shifting power suppressed. Emma tumbled from her back, crying out as she hit the ground. "Foolish beast," the Forgotten said. "We are the antithesis of your primitive magic. We are evolution, humanity freed from nature's chains." Lily backed away, but the path behind them was fading, consumed by creeping darkness. They were trapped. "You were human once," she said, desperate to buy time. "You had a name, a life. How could you give that up?" The creature paused. "I was Richard Thorne. I had a wife who could speak to flowers, a daughter who danced with rabbits. Morrison showed me the truth, that such gifts are chains, keeping humanity from its true potential. I chose freedom. You chose emptiness, Lily countered. You threw away everything beautiful for what? The ability to destroy? To transcend, Richard corrected. Observe. He reached out one void-touched hand toward a tree beside the path. The ancient oak, which had probably stood for 1,000 years, withered instantly. Its leaves turned to ash, its bark to dust, its mighty trunk collapsing into gray powder. Where life had been, nothing remained. Emma screamed. Noah's light flickered dangerously. Soon all will be as we are, Richard continued. Morrison has created dozens of us. We move through your precious wild places, leaving silence. The age of magic ends. The age of void begins. That's when Lily felt it, the pendant Sarah had given her growing warm against her chest. Without thinking, she pulled it out. The moment it touched the air, it blazed with silver fire. Richard recoiled, his form wavering. Impossible. Sarah's power should have died with her. Sarah's last gift, Lily realized. The pendant wasn't just a guide, it was a weapon, charged with the ancient woman's final magic. But even as hope flickered, more shapes emerged from the shadows. 3, 4, 5 more forgotten, each one a wound in reality. They surrounded the small group, their combined presence making the very air feel thin. "Mama," Noah said suddenly, his voice clear and strange. Time to wake up the old friend. "What old friend, baby?" Lily asked, though she suspected Noah wasn't really talking to her. The child pointed down. The one sleeping under everything, the first dreamer. The ground beneath their feet, the glowing path itself, suddenly pulsed with awareness. Something vast stirred in depths that hadn't existed moments before. "No," Richard breathed, and for the first time there was fear in that void voice. "It's just a legend. The world root was destroyed eons ago." Noah giggled. Sleeping isn't destroyed, just waiting for wake-up time. The path erupted. Roots burst from the ground. Not plant roots, but something more fundamental, as if the concept of connection itself had taken physical form. They were silver and gold and green all at once, pulsing with life so intense it made the forgotten shriek in pain. One root touched Ursula, and instantly her power returned, but magnified. She stood on hind legs, but now she was 12 feet tall, her roar shaking reality itself. Emma gasped as her own form shifted, not to bear, but to something between. A child with bare aspects, claws and wisdom beyond her years. The roots reached for Lily and Noah, and the moment they made contact, understanding flooded her mind. The world root, the first living thing. The connection between all that was, is, and would be. It had slept beneath reality since the world grew too cynical to believe in it. But Noah's pure faith, the faith of a child who'd never learned that magic was impossible, had awakened it. "I remember," Lily breathed. And suddenly she did. Memories that weren't hers, or were they, flooded through her. Standing stones and sacred groves, dancing beneath stars that sang. Her grandmother's grandmother's grandmother, weaving moonlight into healing songs. The forgotten were retreating, their void forms unable to stand against the root's primal life force. But Richard held his ground, drawing on reserves of emptiness that ran soul deep. "You only delay the inevitable," he snarled. "Morrison has an army. He has weapons you can't imagine. He'll burn every forest, drain every sacred place, until nothing remains but reasonable, empty silence." "Maybe," said a new voice, "but he'll have to get through us first." Marcus bounded into view, but not alone. With him came a host of others, wolves that walked upright, ravens with human eyes, deer whose antlers sparked with lightning. The shapeshifter clans had arrived. Behind them came more, humans who glowed with their own inner light, carrying staffs and swords that hummed with power. The awakened, the rememberers, all those who'd heard Noah's call and understood what it meant. "The old alliances honor the bridge," announced a woman whose hair was living flame. "The summer court stands with the child." "As does winter," added a man made of ice and shadow. The forgotten were outnumbered now, but Richard laughed, a sound like glass breaking in an empty house. "You think this matters? Morrison knew you'd gather. He wanted you to gather. It saves him the trouble of hunting you down, one by one." A new sound cut through the night. Engines. Many engines. The mundane roar of diesel and steel, but underneath it something worse. The whine of machines built to capture and contain magic itself. Through the trees, lights appeared. Not the gentle glow of the path or the silver fire of Sarah's gift, but harsh electric eyes that burned away shadow and mystery. Morrison's army had found them, even here in the between spaces. "Vehicles on the old roads," Marcus snarled. "That's impossible." "Not anymore," Richard grinned. "Morrison found a way. Iron and electricity, blessed by our presence. Your precious wild magic means nothing against good old human ingenuity." The first truck burst through the tree line, its tires somehow finding purchase on the ethereal path. Armed men poured out, carrying weapons Lily had never seen. Guns that fired nets of cold iron, collars that sparked with electric nullification, cages that folded space itself. And behind them, stepping from an armored vehicle like a general surveying his battlefield, came Morrison Blackwood himself. He was younger than Lily had expected, perhaps 40, with silver-streaked hair and eyes like chips of winter ice. He wore a suit that seemed to absorb light, and around his neck hung a collection of small vials that swirled with captured radiance. "The bridge," he said, his voice cultured and cold. "At last." Noah looked at him with those storm-colored eyes and said a single word: "Broken." Morrison's composed mask slipped for just a moment. "What did you say?" "Broken man wants to break everything," Noah continued. "But broken things can be fixed. Mama fixes things. Mama will fix you too." The man's face contorted with rage. "I am not broken. I am evolved, free from the chains of sentiment and superstition that hold humanity back." He pulled one of the vials from his neck, this one swirling with darkness rather than light. "Do you know what this is, child? The extracted essence of a dryad." She screamed for her tree as I drained her. "And this?" Another vial, pulsing red. "A phoenix's fire. It took me years to figure out how to contain it without it regenerating." "Monster," Ursula growled, her daughter clinging to her fur. "Visionary," Morrison corrected. "In a world of limited resources, power must be consolidated. Why let it scatter randomly among the unworthy when it can be collected, refined, controlled?" He raised his hand, and his soldiers leveled their weapons. The awakened tensed, ready to fight, but everyone could feel the wrongness of those iron-blessed guns. One shot might not kill someone with the gift, but it would hurt. It would weaken. And there were so many soldiers. "Here's what's going to happen," Morrison announced. "You'll hand over the bridge. I'll complete my great work, draining his power and redistributing it to those who will use it properly. Humanity will finally evolve beyond its animal roots, and you'll all have the honor of contributing your essence to the cause." "Never," Lily snarled, surprising herself with the ferocity in her voice. Morrison smiled coldly. "I hoped you'd say that. Men, fire at will, capture the bridge alive, the rest are expendable." The forest erupted in violence. Iron nets flew through the air, seeking magical targets. The shapeshifters charged, some making it to the soldiers before the nullifying weapons could stop them, others falling mid-transformation. The Fey courts struck with summer heat and winter cold, but the Forgotten moved to intercept, their void touch neutralizing Fey magic. In the chaos, Lily ran. The World Root's power still flowed through her, showing her paths between paths. She ducked between battling figures, Noah clutched to her chest, the pendant blazing to ward off grasping hands. But Morrison was too prepared. Everywhere she turned, soldiers appeared. The old roads were compromised, invaded by modern brutality. The magic that should have protected them was being systematically countered. A net caught Marcus mid-leap. Electric shocks forced him back to human form, writhing in pain. The flame-haired woman fell to a collar that dimmed her inner fire to mere embers. One by one, the defenders were being neutralized. "Mama," Noah said urgently, "need to go deeper." "Where, baby? Where can we go?" Noah pointed down again. "Where the first dreamer lives, where broken things get fixed." Before Lily could ask what he meant, the ground beneath them cracked. But this wasn't the gentle emergence of the World Root. This was something more desperate. The path itself was opening, revealing depths that shouldn't exist. Morrison saw it too. "Stop them! Don't let them reach the deep places!" Too late. The ground gave way completely, and Lily found herself falling. Not down, but inward, toward the heart of something vast and ancient and absolutely fundamental to existence itself. The last thing she saw before the ordinary world vanished was Morrison's enraged face and Richard's void form reaching for them with fingers of pure negation. Then they were tumbling through layers of reality, each one older than the last, until they landed soft as feathers in a place that had no name because it existed before naming was invented. "Welcome," said a voice that wasn't a voice but rather the idea of communication itself. "I've been waiting so long for someone to remember the way here." Lily looked up and saw everything. Nothing. The space between heartbeats where all possibilities lived. And at its center, something that might have been a tree if trees were made of pure concept, its roots and branches extending through every reality at once. The first dreamer, the World Root's source, the thing that dreamed existence into being and kept dreaming it, moment by moment, to keep it real. "Help us," Lily whispered. "Please, they want to take my son. They want to end magic." The presence regarded Noah with infinite gentleness. "Little Bridge, you woke me from such a long sleep. The world had grown so loud, with forgetting that I could barely hear myself dream anymore. But you remember without having to learn. You know without being taught." Noah giggled and reached out with chubby fingers. Where he touched the incomprehensible being, light bloomed. Not regular light, but the light of first dawn, of first star, of first thought thinking itself into existence. "They cannot have you," the dreamer declared. "For you are not separate from me. You are my dream of healing, my dream of connection, my dream of dreams, remembering how to dream again." The space around them shuddered. Cracks appeared in the conceptual walls, Morrison's influence reaching even here. "He's strong," the dreamer noted with something like surprise. "He's learned to wound reality itself. How remarkable. How terribly sad." Through the cracks, Lily could see the battle above, her friends and allies being overwhelmed, captured, contained. Morrison himself was descending somehow, his collection of stolen essences creating a ladder of exploited power. "Can you stop him?" Lily begged. "I could unmake him," the dreamer mused. "But that would require unmaking part of my own dream. He exists because I dreamed of choice, of the freedom to turn away from wonder. To destroy him would be to destroy that freedom. Then what can we do? The dreamer's attention turned to her fully, and Lily felt herself seen down to her quantum foundations. You spoke truth above. You fix things. That is your gift, not just with animals, but with the broken connections between what is and what should be. I don't understand. Morrison is not evil. He is wounded. Some hurt in his past, some loss that convinced him that feeling itself was the enemy. He severed himself from the web of connection, not from strength, but from pain. And pain. The dreamer paused. Pain can be healed. Noah clapped his hands. Mama fix broken man. But how? The dreamer rustled. Wind through infinite leaves. By showing him what he's forgotten. By reconnecting him to what he's lost. He's built his armor from stolen power, but beneath it all, he's still the child who once knew wonder. A crack widened. Morrison stepped through, his stolen essences flaring around him like a twisted aurora. Behind him came several forgotten, their void forms eating at the dreamer's reality. So this is where you hide, Morrison said. The deep places, the root of the root. I theorized they existed, but to see it... For just a moment something flickered in his eyes, not greed, but genuine awe. You remember, the dreamer observed. Part of you still remembers the beauty. Morrison's face hardened. Beauty is a lie, told to make us accept powerlessness. I've moved beyond such illusions. He raised a hand, and the vials around his neck began to glow. The stolen essences swirled out, Dryad and Phoenix, Naiad and Sylph, all the magical beings he'd drained over years of hunting. But here in the deep places, something unexpected happened. The essences began to remember themselves. No! Morrison shouted as the captured magic started to coalesce, taking on their original forms, a Dryad of oak and sorrow, a Phoenix of stolen fire. Dozens of beings, translucent and trembling, but aware. They looked at Morrison with eyes full of pain. Why? The Dryad whispered. We would have shared our gifts freely. Why did you take them with such cruelty? For a moment, Morrison's mask cracked completely. Lily saw not a monster, but a man haunted by something terrible. Because sharing wasn't enough, he shouted. My daughter, she had the gift. Nature spoke to her, just like it speaks to him. He pointed at Noah. But when the sickness came, no magic could save her. The flowers she loved so much couldn't cure cancer. The birds she sang with couldn't sing her back to life. What good is wonder against death? What good is beauty against loss? The truth hung in the air like a physical thing. Morrison's war against magic wasn't about power or evolution. It was about grief, about a father who'd lost his child and blamed the very thing she'd loved most. Oh, Lily breathed. You're not trying to destroy magic, you're trying to punish it. Morrison's legs gave out. He fell to his knees, the stolen essences swirling around him in confused patterns. She was only 7 years old, and she died believing the forest would save her, trusting that the magic would come through. It didn't. It never does when you truly need it. Noah squirmed in Lily's arms. Down, Mama. Need to help. Baby, I don't think. But Noah was already sliding from her grasp, toddling on unsteady legs toward the broken man. Morrison watched him approach with tears streaming down his face. Stay back, he whispered. I can't. Noah reached him and did what only a child would do. He hugged Morrison's leg. Magic didn't go away, Noah said in his clear, impossible voice. Magic stayed. In here. He patted Morrison's chest. Where she lives still. Where love lives always. Morrison shuddered. The armor of stolen power began to crack. You don't understand. She's gone. Everything she was, everything she could have been, not gone, Noah insisted. Changed, like caterpillar to butterfly, like seed to flower. Death isn't ending. Death is different, shaped beginning. The dreamer rustled again. The child speaks truth. Your daughter didn't cease, she transformed. Her essence returned to the great dreaming, where all stories begin and end and begin again. Show me, Morrison begged. Please, if there's any mercy in you, show me. Noah placed his tiny hands on Morrison's tear-stained face. Light bloomed between them. Not the harsh light of stolen power, but the gentle radiance of connection restored. And Morrison saw. He saw his daughter not gone but everywhere, in every flower that bloomed, in every bird that sang, in every moment of wonder that any child anywhere experienced. She had become part of the magic itself, not lost, but expanded beyond the boundaries of a single form. "Daddy?" a voice whispered from the swirling essences. "Daddy, why are you so sad? I'm not gone. I'm just bigger now." Morrison broke completely. The vials shattered. The stolen essences erupted outward, free at last, but they didn't flee. Instead, they surrounded him with something like compassion. "We forgive you," the Dryad said softly. "Pain makes us do terrible things, but healing can begin now." The Forgotten, Richard and the others, stood frozen. Without Morrison's will driving them, their certainty wavered. The void forms flickered. "We gave up everything," Richard said numbly. "For nothing?" "Not for nothing," Lily said gently. "For the wrong reason, but it's not too late. The connections you severed can be rewoven. The emptiness you chose can be filled again." She felt the world root responding to her words, offering its power. Not to force or compel, but to heal, to restore, to fix what had been broken. One by one, the Forgotten began to change. The void drained away like poison from a wound. Beneath it, humanity remained, scarred, uncertain, but real. Richard gasped as color returned to his perception. I can feel again. The trees, the stones, the air itself. How did I live without this?" Above them, the battle had stopped. Soldiers stood confused as their leader's rage evaporated. The captured, awakened, were being released, their captors unsure why they'd been fighting in the first place. Morrison knelt in the heart of reality, holding his daughter's essence like cupped starlight. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry." "Silly Daddy," the light whispered back. "Love means never having to apologize for hurting, only for not healing after." The dreamer's presence grew warm with approval. "The bridge has done what bridges do, connected what was separated, healed what was wounded, reminded the world how to dream properly again." Noah toddled back to Lily, yawning hugely. "Sleepy, Mama. Fixed broken man. Time for nap?" Lily scooped him up, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, baby. Time to rest." The deep places began to fade, not ending but gently transitioning back to normal reality. They rose through layers of existence until they stood again in the forest, but it was different now. Fuller, more real. The old roads glowed steadily, and she could feel the world root humming contentedly beneath everything. Morrison stood slowly, supported by the beings he'd once drained. "I have so much to atone for," he said quietly. "So much damage to undo." "Then you'd better get started," Ursula said gruffly, but not unkindly. Her daughter Emma peeked out from behind her, no longer afraid. The gathering of awakened ones looked at each other uncertainly. They'd come expecting a battle and found reconciliation instead. The Fey courts murmured among themselves. The shapeshifter clans tested the air for threats that no longer existed. Marcus limped over, still recovering from the electric net. "So, what happens now?" Sarah emerged from the crowd, and Lily's heart leaped. "You're alive." The ancient woman smiled. "It takes more than a few dozen soldiers to end someone who's been around since the last ice age. Though I must admit, it was closer than I'd have liked." She looked at Morrison. "You fought well, for the wrong reasons, but with admirable skill. I know techniques for containing and channeling magic," Morrison said slowly. "I could teach them, help establish sanctuaries where the gifted can learn safely, make sure no child ever feels abandoned by the power they trust." "And the forgotten?" Lily asked. Richard stepped forward. He looked haggard but human, his eyes full of wonder and regret. "We know what it's like to be severed from the source. We could help others who've lost their way, build bridges between the magical and mundane worlds." Noah yawned again, snuggling against Lily's shoulder. "Good fixing," he mumbled. "Everyone helped. Now sleep." The dreamer's voice echoed from below, felt rather than heard. "The child is wise. Rest now. The real work, the slow, patient work of healing a wounded world, begins tomorrow." As the various groups began to disperse, planning meetings and forming tentative alliances, Lily found herself standing with Sarah, Ursula, and Emma. The storm had passed, leaving the forest crystalline with new snow. "Thank you," Lily said to Sarah. "For everything." Sarah squeezed her shoulder. "Thank you for raising him, for keeping his heart open despite your own loss. The bridge needed a mother who understood both grief and healing." "Will he always be like this?" Lily asked, watching Noah sleep. "Will he always carry this burden?" "It's not a burden if it's carried with love," Ursula said softly. "And he won't carry it alone. None of us will anymore." Emma tugged at Lily's coat. "Can we visit?" "Mama and me? I want to play with Noah when he wakes up." "Of course," Lily smiled. "I think he'd like that." They walked back through the forest together, woman and child, human and bear, ancient guardian and new protector. The first rays of dawn were just touching the treetops, painting the snow in shades of gold and rose. Behind them, Morrison worked alongside the beings he'd once hunted, carefully dismantling the weapons designed to cage wonder. The forgotten relearned what it meant to feel, guided by those who'd never lost that gift. And deep beneath it all, the world root stretched contentedly, its dreams once again flowing freely through the world. The age of separation was ending. The age of reconnection had begun. And in Lily's arms, Noah slept peacefully, smiling as he dreamed of flowers that sang and bears that danced and broken things made whole. The bridge had done his work. Now it was time for the rest of them to do theirs. The path home glowed gently before them, and for the first time since her husband's death, Lily felt truly, completely unafraid. Whatever tomorrow brought, they would face it together. All of them, human and magical, mundane and miraculous, united at last by a baby's innocent faith that everything broken could be fixed with enough love. The sun rose fully, and the world began again.